Welcome back to yet another rant on my channel. Today, I want to talk about the bane of my existence, the airport. I don't think any place in the world triggers me more than the airport. Please tell me, before I proceed, please tell me in the comments, generally speaking, if you agree, if you know where I'm going with this. I can't be the only person who has this internal dilemma every time I go to an airport. I have a friend who always gets liquored up on planes just to be able to deal with the process. I have another friend who doesn't board a flight without consuming a an edible, like a weed edible. So I don't think it's just me who gets triggered by the whole process. I actually now make a point to go for a run, like to exercise the day of a flight, because I just know some bullshit is waiting for me at the airport. I just know. And if it's not waiting for me at the airport, it's most certainly waiting for me on the plane ride over. So let me tell you about my day yesterday at the airport. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a planner. When it comes to travel and airports and planes, I have a process. I do not deviate from the process because I know that some shit is always waiting for me anyway. So I have to be fully prepared. Please let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. I have a process with traveling, right? Basically, the main thesis of my strategy with airports is if I don't have to wait in a line, I will do whatever I can to avoid waiting in a line. If it's not absolutely essential for me to wait in any kind of line, I will evade that line. Okay. So what that ends up meaning is that the only real headache I have to deal with at an airport is security. And security, as we all know, can take 5 minutes. At some of the busiest airports ever, it can take 5 minutes. It can also take over an hour, depending on how chaotic things are. But other than that, I am that person who always shows up to the airport with my carry-on luggage ready to go. I don't check bags because I just feel like that leads to other headaches, and then you have to wait in that line. So I am that person. I do not check bags. And the other thing is I always show up with my boarding pass ready to go before I'm ever at the airport. So typically that ends up just being like, on my phone I have the QR code, right? Now I'm such a planner that I made sure, even to avoid any potential unnecessary drama, because there's always some shit that comes your way at an airport, I made sure to actually stay at the airport the night before. I stayed at a hotel on the premises. You know how they always have hotels, within like walking distance of an airport. I stayed at one of those hotels so that I did not have to anticipate any traffic in the morning, remove that variable. So I showed up to the airport in the morning with more than enough time, and I headed straight to the security line because I already had my boarding pass and already had my carry-on luggage ready to go with me on the plane. No checked bags. Wonderful, happy camper, right? Now I'm in the security line no more than 5 minutes, and one of the guys working there at the airport plucks me out along with a few other people. They always do this. They find a few random people to just mess with. And I already know this is about to ruin my day. They direct us to a different line to test out whether our carry-on luggage really fits the requirements of carry-on luggage to fit in the overhead compartment. So, they have like a sample thing. It reminds me of that game that we used to all play as toddlers, where you fit the shapes, the geometric shapes into their holes. They do that with the suitcases. Now, mind you, my carry-on suitcase has been with me for every trip for over a decade. It will fit. It will fit. I will make it fit. Okay. But admittedly, I would say my suitcase was slightly bloated. It was slightly overpacked. Okay. I still was able to close it just fine in the morning before leaving the hotel. But you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's like you bring a few extra things from your trip and suddenly your suitcase is just a little bloated, like after Thanksgiving dinner bloated. So as soon as he directs me to do this, I'm like, shit, this might be problematic. And I already know this just because, as I said, some shit will always happen at the airport that just disrupts your entire flow. So I'm now sticking it into this rectangular shape that they have. and I have to push a little bit harder to really like fit it in. And the guy stops me and he's like, "Sir, if it doesn't just fall right through into this hole, your suitcase is too big. You're gonna have to check it." So at this stage, I'm thinking I have two solutions, right? Two solutions. I can either argue with this guy, create a scene, tell him about all my trips that I've had with this carry on luggage fitting into the overhead compartment just fine. I can do a whole thing, a whole monologue, or I can just do what he tells me to do, right? Maybe I was feeling extra generous that day. Maybe it was just too early in the morning for me to want to argue. I don't know. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to check this bag and move on, right? And again, at this stage, I have more than enough time for my flight. Of course, I'm annoyed that I got taken out of the security line, but I'll be okay, right? Here's the thing, I have not checked a bag in like a decade. I just don't check bags. It seems like such a headache to me to deal with that. Not just the extra process when you arrive at the airport, but also after your flight to have to wait at the carousel. I just have all these memories from childhood of like connecting flights with my family, and then the luggage was stuck in the other city and we'd have to wait forever at the carousel. So I'm that person. I avoid checking bags. Do you avoid checking bags? Let me know in the comments. I just don't understand why you would ever check a bag unless you absolutely have to. So anyway, I show up to the area of the airport to check my bag. I did not realize, maybe it was just this airport, but it was absolute mayhem. There's like 5 different lines, have no idea which one is for what, but I see kiosks, like the little stations where you can get your own boarding pass, and I see that you can print your own baggage tag. So I'm like, perfect. The year is 2025. I'm sure they have modernized this over the years. I can probably just print a tag and hand my suitcase to somebody working here and be done with it and go back to security, right? No, of course not, because they want to make it complicated. Let me tell you what happened. So I go to the kiosk to print baggage tags, and it tells me I need to pay 70 euros just to check this small carry on luggage. But I'm like, you know what? Fine. I will pay you. If you want to make a quick buck for me, fine. I just want to go back to the security line and go on my plane. So I pay with my credit card, and the screen stays on this permanent loading thing for literally like 5 minutes straight. So I'm just waiting there for 5 minutes, waiting for it to process my payment. And of course, it never does. It just stays frozen. So now I'm like, forget it, Kev. Move on to the next one. I go to another kiosk to try again. This time it says, hey, you're in luck. You don't have to pay at all, which makes no sense because the other machine had just told me, a minute prior that I had to pay. You don't have to pay at all because we don't even have overhead room left on the plane anyway. So now everybody has to check their bags. Okay, that one does print me a bagging tag. So now I'm like, I'm good, right? I'm done with this whole thing. I go to one of the people working there for the airline who's just standing there, and I'm thinking, they'll probably take my suitcase and they have a whole process for this. Oh no. She gives me a look and then, kind of does one of these, like pointing to this huge line, the old school check-in desks, and she tells me I have to still do that line to leave my luggage. So I'm now thinking, what was the point of printing my own baggage tags if I have to wait in that same line anyway, where the people for working for the airline are printing your bagging tags? Like that doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. Go with the flow, Kev. Go with the flow. Don't lose it on these people. You're in France. Don't lose it. Don't be a Karen in France. So I'm now in that line. I make my, I wait. I'm finally the next person up, and they direct me to a self-help, like a self-checkout kiosk. So I'm now at another kiosk where I'm just doing it manually myself. And I'm thinking, why was I at another self-checkout kiosk to now be at another one that I had to wait in a line for? Like it doesn't make sense, but whatever. Go with the flow, go with the flow. Of course, the screen freezes again, not just mine. All the screens freeze at the same time in that row of desks. And a lady comes over from the airline and goes, oh, I guess you're all going to have to actually interact with a real person. And she points, there's only one person working at these check-in desks. The people are pissed because presumably, just like me, they've been waiting this whole time just to now have to enter another line because these machines don't work. So I look over to the one lady working for the airline, and she's helping this elderly couple. And I just know this elderly couple is going to take forever. Now, I have nothing against the elderly, but why is it that every time you go to, please tell me if you agree with this. I feel like every time I go to the airport, it seems like you're surrounded by people who have never been on a plane before. Like it's their first time going through this process. The lady tells this elderly couple, she gives them the spiel of, before we take your luggage, can you please confirm that you have none of these items? She points to this list. There's like there's like guns, there's weapons of mass destruction, there's like a flame torch. She's like, can you confirm you don't have any of these things? Do you have anything flammable? And the elderly couple, they look at each other and they're like, I don't know. Maybe we left our Roman candles in there or fireworks. They open the suitcase to do a scan of whether they have any of these prohibited items. I'm like, sir, you could have a rifle in there and you're still supposed to know that you just say yes, yes, check all boxes, pass go, but do not collect $200. Just send your luggage on their merry way. And then the guy in the elderly couple, I guess he has a moment of anxiety of like, what if we lose our luggage? So he demands an extra tag so that he can fill out all his personal information with his address. And I'm like, this is not the 90s. Like, they print a tag for you that has your name and says your final destination. We're not relying on caveman drawings here to figure out whose luggage is whose. Like, there's a whole system here, sir. So at this point, I'm just like triggered. And now I'm like, okay, I really need to get to the security line soon. I mean, with all these lines and the self checkout chaos, like, I can't do this. So I make eye contact with the one lady working there and I say, hey, can I please just leave my suitcase with you? Look, I already have the baggage tag. I already have my boarding pass. I just need to give you my suitcase. Like, take it. I don't want it. Take my suitcase. And she, of course, confirms that I have to wait for this couple ahead of me, the elderly couple, to finish their process. So she's just standing there. She's not doing anything. She's literally watching them fill out this, you know, handwritten tag. And then, of course, the pen doesn't work. So then they look for another pen. It's a whole thing. By the way, in the meantime, there's a guy in the line who's like tweaking. And I promise you, it's not me. This is not projection. There's a guy in the line who's tweaking. He's freaking out and he's trying to skip the line. And the people behind me had an aggressive dog. Like, I'm talking, the dog had a muzzle and everything. And I kid you not, they were going to unleash this dog on this guy any second because this guy is arguing with everybody. He is pissed that he's having to wait in another line and that the screens are frozen. And I'm already like, I'm triggered by this whole process so far. So when I see him step up to me, like he's trying to get ahead of me, I'm like, sir, I am also waiting. By the way, all of this is in French. I should have mentioned this earlier. All of this is in French, which makes it even more like hysterical because just imagine a bunch of French people arguing in French at the airport, including me. That's what was happening. I'm like, Monsieur, j'attends aussi. So he's yelling at me. The people behind me are like this close to unleashing their aggressive dog on this man. He's pissed and complaining about the screens freezing. Like, what a drama. What a drama. Finally, the elderly couple leaves. It's now my turn. You guys, she looked at my passport for all of 10 seconds and took my luggage. I'm like, you couldn't have just done this before. Like, I don't understand. I dart for the security line. And do you ever have those moments in life where you wish life was a video game? Meaning, you know how in video games there are no consequences? Like, you can hit people, you can shove people, no consequences. I had one of those fantasy moments of just shoving people out of my way who are just standing idle, in the main artery of the airport, people taking selfies. I'm like, yes, you're in France, but you're not in Paris. You're at the airport. Why are you taking selfies? Like, I just want to push you out of the way. So I make a run for it. I make it through security. I kid you not. I get to my gate and they were already boarding my zone. I kid you not. 10, 20 minutes later, and I would have been screwed. Like, I would have missed my flight. I just don't understand how this industry, which has to be like $1 billion industry, right? With all these gigantic planes and the plethora of flights happening on a daily basis around the world, I don't understand how these processes at airports are so inefficient that you can always expect some bullshit at the airport. Is it just me? Am I just too high maintenance? Please tell me in the comments if you agree. I feel like it's one of those industries where you pay so much money, right, to board a plane, even for basic economy flights, that you would think that the level of customer service and, efficiency of these processes, that it would be so much more organized and modern, and yet it's really not. And don't even get me started on, if your plane last minute doesn't take off, dealing with that drama, how unsympathetic the airlines can be. I mean, it really is one of the most, I think, exploitative industries of customers that exist. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Am I alone in this? Do you share my sentiments? Let me know. So curious to hear what you guys think.